Hi, I'm Ray Marsh, and welcome to the first in a series of documentaries on Australia's road transport heritage. From very early settlement, Australians have always been quick to devise efficient means of transporting supplies and people. The need for reliable transport was created by the rapid influx of squatters and pastoralists, constantly pushing the boundaries of population further inland, and miners who moved from strike to strike at a rapid pace. This program focuses on Queensland, Central Australia, and the top end, the outback areas, tracing some 150 years of development with rare historical footage, incredible characters, tales of camaraderie and raw determination, that true Aussie grit. From the most primitive camel trains and donkey jacks, the very first road trains, right through to the latest sleek big rigs of today, we capture the stories of our road transport pioneers as we reflect on hoofprints, horsepower and hard yakka.
Raised on the Warrego. It's hot out here, but you tough it out like an old brigalow. From the back of the Channel Country, across the western plains, the roads are straight and dusty, and the folks are much the same.
G'day.
G'day.
Thanks for stopping.
No worries.
This is a big truck.
One of the biggest on the road, mate.
Yeah?
Yep. Big man driving it too.
Where are you heading?
Darwin.
Darwin.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds good. Don't mind if I tag along?
Well, as long as,
Behave myself?
yeah. Keep your shoes on, so to speak.
No worries.
Been waiting there long?
Oh, no, not long. I'm doing a bit of research on the road transport industry, and they told me that some character called Tom Lopez might be coming along. That wouldn't be you, would it?
Just by bloody coincidence. Good information. Where'd you get that from?
Do many truckies stop and pick up hitchhikers?
I think they pick up the skinny ones, the big ones they leave behind.
But you'd be looking for a bit of company, I would think.
Not really. I just felt sorry for you.
Oh, thanks.
Actually, I like that Akubra.
You do?
I'm hoping we can swap.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that a bit later.
This is a world of great characters, great distances and mechanical monsters, not necessarily in that order. It's also a world of strange terminology. B-doubles, triples, double bubbles, they're police cars, and scalies, inspectors who keep an eye on today's truckies and their payloads.
And what are we pulling?
2 trailers.
Yep. Full of
Flour.
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 Flour, 47 tonnes of it earmarked for Rockhampton, where intriguingly another 47 tonnes of different flour will be loaded for the journey to Darwin. From Toowoomba, it's a 7,500 kilometre round trip. That'll take Tom Lopez just over a week. 150 years ago, you'd have been laughed out of the pub for suggesting such a thing. It would have taken these donkeys 15 months to cart not even a quarter of Tom's load of flour. Fuel was cheap, courtesy of Mother Nature, though travel was virtually impossible during the wet season. You couldn't complain about the roads because there weren't any. At 20 miles a day, bullockys marked better time than their competitors, the donkey jacks. Bullock drays were put to work soon after settlement, much to the relief of convict teams that were forced to heave logs and wagon loads of stone. Better to break a convict's back than to overburden a good horse. In the desert, no beast of burden, no matter how resilient, could match this Pakistani importee. Strings of camels were a lifeline to places other animals dared not go. Remote communities and outback goldfields where prospectors hoped to make their fortune. So hardy were these camels that sights like this were difficult to comprehend. Camels bogged and donkeys to the rescue? It took 66 donkeys and a considerable amount of swearing and whip-cracking by teamsters to pull 10 muddied and wearied camels out of the river. Transporting freight was a tough occupation for the animals and those who drove them. It was also dangerous, as this film on early transportation reveals.
John Conway Burke was the first overland mailman between Melbourne and Yass, New South Wales. In January 1838, he set out from Melbourne, well-mounted, armed with 2 pistols, and carrying 15 pounds of mail in his saddlebags. His route was over 200 miles of trackless bush. Like all pioneers, he had to face many hardships and dangers. He had many adventures, and on several occasions barely escaped with his life. Burke faithfully carried the mail until 1841, when a coach service between Sydney and Melbourne was established, not only to carry the mail, but passengers as well.
From the 1850s, big things started happening, not only in the goldfields, but also in the transport industry. Freeman Cobb, an American immigrant, and 3 partners, launched a stagecoach service that became a legend. By 1870, Cobb & Co. had 6,000 horses on the go each day, £95,000 a year in the till, and regular services in Queensland to Ipswich, the Darling Downs and Gympie. Where there were gold strikes, you'd find them. John Wybert's misfortune as a drayman in Ipswich spawned a dynasty, 5 generations of removalists.
After he arrived from England, he was working for a produce merchant. The produce merchant went broke and gave John the horse and cart in lieu of the wages that were owing to him. Some of the work that he did was carting from the wharves. Later on, he started carting furniture, not on a regular basis because people didn't move as often then. Our oldest records of him doing furniture removals was in 1906, when it was 2 and 6pence to move a load of furniture within Ipswich.
Trains steamed into Ipswich in 1865.
Heavy loads of freight are hauled by powerful locomotives capable of pulling 2,000 tons or hauling passenger trains at 70 miles per hour.
As traffic and trade grew, steel tracks began to crisscross the nation, although governments found it impossible to agree on a standard gauge.
The Victorian government built its lines on a 5-foot 3-inch gauge. New South Wales used a standard 4-foot 8.5-inch gauge. South Australia linked up with Victoria's broad gauge. But Queensland and Western Australia built lighter and cheaper railways of 3-foot 6-inch gauge. Now, travellers from Brisbane to Perth have to change trains at Albury, Port Pirie and Kalgoorlie.
By 1920, with 9,000 vehicles in Queensland, the Main Roads Act and the establishment of the Main Roads Board couldn't have come soon enough. But early attempts at road building were laboriously slow.
What's this, Fred?
It's a new 2-horsepower bitumen sprayer. You see, speed of the horses controls thickness of tar.
Any problems?
Yeah, at first, contamination from droppings.
What did you do?
Oh, just fitted the horses with Hessian nappies.
And when it wasn't mud, it was dust. There were about 700 men on the job, and there were a few rugged types amongst them too.
Despite mud, bull dust and that other scourge of the bush, flies, road workers with new steam-powered equipment were winning. If they needed water, they'd cart it 100 miles or more, unless they were lucky enough to find an artesian bore. During the Depression, the unemployed were recruited, whether they liked it or not.
In Bezug auf das Sudetendeutsche Problem. Meine Geduld jetzt zu Ende ist.
When the Second World War broke out, hundreds of truck drivers answered the call, not to fight, but to build even more roads, west to Alice Springs and north to Darwin. Trucks, destined to be the natural enemy of trains, put paid to drovers and draymen and tripled their loads. Primary produce was trucked into the city markets, merchandise trucked out.
Come and see what performance isn't. When you're driving this old truck, you really know you're alive. Very slow, top speed of 28 mile an hour, it just hums along.
It wasn't what you'd call a heavy-duty unit, more a bread and butter worker with the heart of a bulldog. A respectable furniture removalist of the day paid £700 for it, another £300 for the van body, which is made of timber. Between 1928 and 1953, this AB series Mack clocked just short of 1 million miles. That's 1.5 million kilometres. And it's still going strong, albeit dwarfed by the latest and the biggest ever offering from the Mack stable of workhorses, a state-of-the-art Mack Magnum. Victorian truckie Ian Einzadel picked up the keys at Mack headquarters in Brisbane and couldn't wait to drive it home to show his missus. That's because his wife, Katrina Einzadel, is a truckie too. Last year, Mrs. Einzadel was nominated for Australian Transport Woman of the Year. If Jack McCafferty were alive today, he could tell you something of awards for ground transport. He was honoured with scores of them. But the king of the road came from very humble beginnings. His motto was always, "The man who never made a mistake never made a success." Jack McCafferty's first foray into the transport industry was by horse and cart, selling milk he'd extracted with his own hands. Ever the entrepreneur, April Fool's Day 1940 seemed a good day to start his own bus service.
Picnic Point. This service terminates at Picnic Point. All out at Picnic Point.
7 pence a ride it was from the centre of Toowoomba on the Darling Downs to Picnic Point on the range. "60 years on, Jack's son Tony makes his business trips in a pocket rocket, a Falcon jet, one of the fastest outside the military.
Well, Jack's often been described as a modern-day Marco Polo, and that was said at the eulogy at his funeral, and a lot of people have said it during his life. Jack was eager to explore new lands, new places. He tried to involve as many people as possible to join his group tours. He wasn't a person who enjoyed doing it on his own. He enjoyed showing it to other people, the world around us.
With an annual turnover of $60 million, McCafferty's is the undisputed leader in express coach services nationwide. Jack McCafferty lived up to his name, which in the Gaelic means rider of the steed. Amid fierce competition for the right to operate passenger routes, this steed went the distance and won the race. If only moving these creatures of the outback was so simple. The key was to transform 1,000 miles of windy bull dust track from southwest Queensland to the Gulf into a viable road system. A system that had served tourist safaris, cattlemen and wool producers alike. The Commonwealth State Beef Road was an ambitious project, but it worked against the odds. Heat, dust, crocodiles and termite nests that made road construction a daunting occupation. The means of moving livestock en masse came from a son of the Red Centre. Kurt Johansson was a man who could run a vehicle on gas from burning timber. But he's best known as the father of the modern-day road train.
There were 10 stud bulls to go up the road and there's a drought on, and the chap came round to me and said, can you cart some water and some hay up along and put it in stages up so that I can move these young bulls up. It'll take us about 2 or 3 months to get them up there because they're only young. And I said, well, what about I put a crate on the back of the truck and cart them up for you? Oh, I don't know, can you do that? And that was the beginning of it. I landed the bulls there in a day's run, and they were in top-class condition when they arrived there. Matter of fact, just as the time when in the evening, when the milking cows come in, they let the bulls off there, and they had to separate the cows from them.
The spectacle of Kurt's road train in action was remarkable for its time. This amateur film was taken in 1945, soon after Kurt built his self-tracking double-bogie trailers and modified a couple of ex-US Army Diamond T tank transporters. It was the first time a prime mover hauling a road train full of livestock had ever made a profit.
When I first started, I was ridiculed quite a lot that trying to do the impossible. Dad got polio, Mum got TB, and the drought was on, 7-year drought. As a child, I used my hands, my eyes and my ears. Anything practical, I was very good at it. And I loved taking shortcuts. And if it was possible to do, I would do it. And that's how I come to building the road trains. You know the old saying, I told you so.
Today's road trains are worth big bickies. Try upwards of $250,000 for the prime mover. The trailers are extra. And if you want to fill the tank, you're looking at about $1,400 a time. All I can say is Tom Lopez must have great faith in my motor skills.
Down.
Back.
Back.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. You relaxed?
I am. Are you?
I'm cool.
Why's your leg shaking? That's it. Now ease the clutch out.
What's the insurance on a rig like this?
You're off.
Eh?
You're off.
Accelerate now?
About 12 grand a year. Yeah, on the right one, though. What are you doing?
12 grand a year.
You got your foot on the brake. Take your foot off the brake. Let the clutch out a bit.
Let the clutch out. Ease it out a bit, okay.
Just feel
and
it.
down, right.
That's
Okay,
it.
Gently. Now put your foot on the accelerator.
Yeah. Do you know which one's the accelerator?
I've worked out which is the accelerator, thanks, Tom. We're off. You hanging on?
Yeah. Okay, up with the grey button.
Push it in.
Now clutch.
Clutch.
That's it. Leave it there. Leave the stick there. Now let your clutch out. And you've changed gears. Okay, next gear. Yep, you did it. You're wonderful. I'm going to sleep. Goodbye.
Stop now. I think we'll stop. We'll pull up while it's safe.
Yeah.
I think with a bit of practice.
Yeah. I think there's a...
I could get this to Darwin.
A surprising number of women are in it for the long haul. Some do it out of necessity, others because they're married to the lifestyle. For Thora Holzheimer, known in the road industry as Toots, it was a bit of both.
No life otherwise.
What do you mean?
Well, there's no ties anywhere, so I might as well be tied up with the old girl. So her and I'll die together, put it that way.
A working week for this grandmother and mother of 8 was 3 round trips carrying essential supplies from Cairns to Weipa. 800 kilometres each way of nothing but treacherous roads, bull dust, bogs, breakdowns and blistering heat. Given the choice of staying at home with husband Ron, Toots chose adversity every time.
I don't like him drinking. I get the blunt of it. That's what I don't like. But that's his problem, not mine. As I said, I get in here, I go home quick, very quick.
But we don't see anybody, we don't see each other long enough, do we?
No, what are we, 25 years married this year?
Yeah.
And 10 years living together, that's not bad.
You had your 25 years over again, would you do the same thing?
Yeah.
He might, I won't.
Why, what would you do different?
Man, I'll be on my own, stay on me bloody own.
Oh, you wouldn't get
Well,
married, in other words?
I wouldn't get married, no, I live with the boss and kick them out then. That's my attitude of them.
It would have been anathema to Toots, but the trend in trucking in the United States is driving 2 up with your partner, your marital partner. The Katrina and Ian Einsadel team is considered in the top 5% of the country in terms of professionalism and ethics. The Mac Magnum addition to their business and baby Hayden are testament to their successful partnership.
How's that?
The Einsadels now run 2 prime movers with a B-double trailer load of freight between Melbourne and Sydney up to 3 times a week. In the next few months, they hope to buy yet another prime mover, which would boost their annual turnover to near the $1 million mark. And they started with nothing 4 years ago.
What do you think of it, darling? Nice to drive?
Fabulous truck to drive. I've never driven anything like this. This is unbelievable. Smooth, comfortable, and so quiet. That's one thing you really appreciate. A heap of power, and you can't hear it. It's like a car to drive.
Neville? Neville? Just blew a tyre.
Tell someone who cares.
Come and help me change it.
Which one?
Looked like it was on the dolly.
Righto, play it somewhere, we'll get into it.
On the mail run from Toowoomba to Darwin, Driving two up with your partner has its advantages, especially when you've only got 44 hours to get there. Before she teamed up with Nev, Claire Louise Rose changed all her own tyres. No mean feat when you're driving a triple road train.
We've got about 62 tyres, but you know, you might change one a trip if you're, you know, having a sort of an average run. If you're having a really good run, you won't change any.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, I've had experiences where I've had to change 5 by myself. So, but at least on this run, there's 2 of us. So, you know, if there's any problem, well, yeah, there's someone here to help you, you know.
Oh, I don't think you've got to be any sort of a butch sort of a woman. I just think it's someone that knows what they're doing and can handle the distance and handle the job. That's, you know, you don't have to be a muscle-bound person to do it. You just got to be sensible and be switched on nowadays, because the whole industry is different to what it was 10 years ago. It's more technical and more sophisticated.
How come it's always got to be on the sunny side?
Try and help you get a good tan, I guess.
Is that off the ground?
Yep, she's right.
It's more than domestic harmony. When you're in the road transport industry together, this is marital bliss.
No, I left her behind once.
Yeah, he did leave me behind
That was accidental at West Wyalong. But I had to check the cattle, and I asked if she wanted to go to the toilet. She said she was right, so I hopped up, checked the cattle, hopped back in. As I'm driving out, I looked down on the floor and I saw her boots missing. At the same time, she called up over the radio from
that was the thing. I had to go in the
service
console
station.
in the service station and call up on their UHF. Honey, would you come back and get me? And you can imagine all the other trucks went, oh, yeah, we'll come back, we'll come back. And no answer from him, no.
I was parked on the side of the road letting us stew for a bit.
Yeah, he did come back, but 15 minutes later.
Oh, you have the odd altercation, but you sort of just let it go and don't play on it.
It's a team effort, so,
just
you know.
that's all we do together. She's a pretty excellent driver. She knows what she's doing. Feel completely safe and confident with her. I suppose you could sort of say she's got sheer guts and determination. Yes, does it really well. And a few brains to go with it.
Thanks.
It's just what I like doing, that's it. I roll 3 trucks. I'm still here. So, to tell the tale, if I roll that one, mate, I'm going with it. I don't think I want to live without that one.
Her words were prophetic. Toots was killed at Weipa in February 1992. She was crushed by a steel pylon while loading her beloved truck. One of Australia's great pioneering women, Toots holds a special place of honour on the National Truck Drivers Memorial Wall at Tarcutta near Wagga Wagga in New South Wales. (1979). Those who witnessed it would never forget it. It started with 5 drivers who parked their trucks across the Hume Highway at Razorback Mountain, south of Sydney. Within 48 hours, the nation's road freight had come to a standstill as truckers in every state refused to budge. After years of battling government-subsidised railways, exorbitant road tax, low freight rates and interstate trade restrictions, they'd had enough. Those who hadn't gone to the wall already believed they soon would. Even today, the industry claims it's taxed 2.5 times higher than any other. And rail, like loneliness, fatigue and bad press, is an omnipresent foe.
Sometimes you can feel so sorry for them. They've been away for up to 10 days away from their families, and they're quite often in the truck on their own, and they've driven for, you know, up to 8 hours without anybody to talk to.
7 hours west of Brisbane, Nikki and Steve Kirby's Roadhouse is the liveliest place in Morven. That's because it's the only place in town to get a decent feed and a hot shower at any time of the day.
I'll have a rare rump, chips and gravy, please, Nicky.
You know the saying, if truckies stop there, it's bound to be good.
No problem.
Thank you.
Chips and gravy?
For Bill?
Yep. Okay.
Oh, I reckon they're a hard-working, honest sort of mob. Of course, it's like all industries and aspects of our life. There's the good and the bad.
When the entire industry is criticised for the mistakes of a few, Bill Baskett hits back.
Maybe some of it's deserved, but there are beat-ups which we've seen. The press has changed around a fair bit. Most times now when you see accidents reported, there's pretty level reporting, and I believe that the industry has cleaned up its act a great degree.
Few in Queensland know the industry better than Bill.
Really good, mate, yeah.
That looks all right.
Thanks, Cal.
A former truckie turned transport operator, Bill has long been involved with the State Livestock Carriers Association and the building of the beef roads back in the 60s. Over time, he's seen some big changes and embraced them wholeheartedly.
Women have been in the industry for quite a while and have done an excellent job. There's no reason at all why that won't grow, because it's you know, some of the jobs now certainly they can handle as well as what the men can.
Only some? If Toots Holzheimer were alive, she might have something to say about that.
Generally it's pretty good, but occasionally, you know, you'll get some guy that's come from the Dark Ages, doesn't like to see a woman in the last male bastion. You'll cop a bit of flack from them, but it's, you know, you don't worry about it.
You do get the odd one or two that, you know, will mouth off or whatever, but no, in general, it's pretty well accepted. I think there's been enough women drivers before me to have paved the way that's, you know, I stepped into it quite easily.
It's a good lifestyle. It's a lot more professional nowadays than it was in the, I suppose, the 70s and the 80s. And I think companies now treat you a lot better than what they used to back then too, but it's getting in with the right company too. It's a mainstay, but then again, you have to be good enough to get in with the right company.
A little while ago, we wouldn't have wanted Hayden to grow up to be a driver, but now you think, well, it's actually not too bad a job. I have to admit, before I met Ian, I knew nothing about trucks and I had absolutely no idea. And, you know, I can remember driving Dad's old farm truck down the road thinking, oh yeah, this would be an all right kind of lifestyle, driving a truck, thinking, you know, this is the middle of the day. It never occurred to me that, you know, actual truck driving meant driving all night and, you know, lack of sleep.
Night or day, it makes no difference. There's always a deadline to meet. If they fail to meet it, they'll lose their livelihood. The stakes are high, with about 500 million tonnes of freight to move each year in Queensland alone. The competition is that tough.
We leave Toowoomba on Friday afternoon and we're in Darwin within, 44 hours, which is about Sunday lunchtime.
Like the Einsadells and the Roses, many truckies drive two up, 6 hours on, 6 hours off, counting sheep in the back bunk.
We carry most of our own food with us so that we don't sort of lose much time by stopping at roadhouses and things like that. But we do occasionally stop there for a break, you know, for a change of pace.
For lone drivers, 12 hours a day is the legal limit, with at least 2 half-hour breaks. All trips must be logged. If there are inconsistencies, the Highway Constabulary, the double bubbles and the scalies, will get them. Morven Roadhouse rarely sleeps. The hot plate in the kitchen may be turned off, but the action in the parking lot, hooking up new trailers and abandoning others, never stops. On the Brisbane to Darwin run, Morven is pivotal. This is where prime movers hauling 2 trailers transform into serious road trains. From Morven to Darwin, prime movers are permitted to hook on a 3rd trailer loaded with freight. At first light, the Simon National Transport boys are performing their pre-trip ritual. Like most road trains that stop at Morven, their freight is destined for Darwin.
Yeah, I'll get that fuel card off you fellas, Arnie.
Yep, come on, Arnie.
David Murray and Arnie Lobwin will be the first into the Northern Territory. They're driving 2 up. Andrew Burns is doing it alone.
What do you think about while you're driving?
Mainly myself.
You enlighten us a bit more?
Where you're heading, short-term and long-term goals, positive mental attitude, all that sort of stuff.
Think about home?
Yeah, a lot, but I'm not thinking about myself, of course.
What sort of a strain does it put on your marriage?
Yeah, it has its moments, I suppose, when there's stuff going on that ain't running right. They feel as if they're sort of left to battle on their own. My wife comes from the Gulf. She's from a cattle property, so they're fairly stout and independent anyway, you know, pretty reliant on themselves. Generally, if the fish are out the pub at 5 o'clock. Muster the kids up, head home, cook some tea.
Yeah. Sounds like a good woman.
So the kids generally get 1 good meal a week, I mean.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's the main thing.
The truck drivers, they're great. They're wonderful characters. They're all so different. They come in here, you can have a laugh with them.
Don't forget the milk and sugar, Arnie.
I think so many people don't know what a truck driver really is like. They're fun, they're good. They're some of our best customers.
A former McDonald's manager and legal secretary, Nikki Kirby is new to the trucking industry. So is her husband Steve, who left the police force to run the Morven Roadhouse. Staffer Carmel Leeson has been cooking in roadhouses and serving truckies for 20 years.
We're the wise monkeys. Hear no evil, see no evil, say no evil.
What do you like listening to?
A bit of Kernigan.
Bit of Kernigan. Is that Lee Kernigan?
Yeah.
Fall behind, reckon I've been through it all.
Sounds a bit depressing, Tom.
Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite.
So much change with a kiss. It's just me and you. And the God of windy moon.
The stereotype in a Jackie Howe singlet, stubbies and thongs may be passé to new age operators. The image of the driver and mode of transportation may be different, but the role, the heart and soul remain the same.
It'll certainly be a sad place without it. Nearly anything that, I'd say almost everything that we use or build with or eat or make things, you know, everything at one stage of the game has been moved by truck. If we didn't have road trains, we'd be a third world country. We'd be that isolated and it'd take that long to move the commodities around the country, you just wouldn't be able to do so.
What would Ipswich pioneer John Wybird say if he could see what's been achieved in 5 generations?
John, my great-grandfather, had Henry, my grandfather, would not be able to comprehend what we do now. Their longest journey that I know of was to Redcliffe, which was a 4-day trip from Ipswich with the horses. They would never have envisaged, I wouldn't think, that now we would be in distant cities within a few hours and loading containers to be air freighted overseas.
Now living in Adelaide with partner Daphne Palmer and still tinkering, the father of modern road trains can truly be said to be a man of great vision.
I love it, but often make a remark to people, oh, there's that silly bastard who built those things and causing all the scares that people have of a big road train coming towards them.
The serpentine 98-wheel Cannington Icon, operated by BHP, is the first of its type in the world. Pulled by a Mack Titan prime mover, it's 53.5 metres long and weighs 166 tonnes. Kurt Johansson's legacy is getting bigger.
Truck stop on the edge of the highway, 2 pumps and a golden fleece. Well, I'm here wiping bugs off the windscreen, dirt and diesel and elbow grease. Out here on this dot on a road map, just a blink and you passed on. Was there a thought for the boy by the Bowser, living in the lignum, dreaming about getting gone? Well, I've heard about the girls on the beaches, and someday I'm gonna get me one. But wait a minute, the bell rings and I'm back in the real world. Check the oil and fill her up some.
So many more memories of our great road transport heritage can be found at the National Road Transport Hall of Fame in Alice Springs. From humble beginnings just 5 short years ago, operated entirely by volunteers and funded by public donation, the National Road Transport Hall of Fame is the prime project of the National Road Transport Heritage Society and has become Australia's premier focal point in recording and preserving the rich, diverse history of trucking the Aussie way. We met up with Society Chairperson Liz Martin. Liz, tell us about the Society, its origin and what it's all about.
The Road Transport Historical Society is actually a community-based organisation managed and operated by volunteers. It was originally started in 1992 and was an idea from some local historians that we must do something to preserve our transport heritage. Transport was something that we considered had either been understated or forgotten by mainstream historians.
You said earlier the Hall of Fame is primarily sponsor and donor funded, but do you receive any government support?
In the last 2 years we have attracted some government funding. The Northern Territory Government in particular has also been very supportive for providing us with the funding to erect this building on our site.
Liz, one exhibit which fascinated me is the 1934 AEC, which has been beautifully restored. What's the history behind that?
That particular road train was the first motorised road train to have any real impact on Australia, particularly in Central Australia. It was actually built in London by the AEC company under commission from the British Army, and it was designed for desert warfare. There was actually 3 of them made. One was sent to Africa for trial, one to Russia, and this particular one to Australia. And it is the only one in existence.
And what of the future? I understand you have a big party coming up with some special projects in the pipeline.
Our project we've got underway at the moment is our Year 2000 reunion. We're actually having a very large reunion here in the year 2000. And the prime focus of that will be the restoration and a recreation of Kurt's truck running through the streets of Alice Springs.
And of course among these is the restoration of Kurt Johansson's road train, which we saw in the documentary.
We are restoring it. It was one of the first vehicles that this society had the privilege of actually retrieving and bringing onto the site here. Kurt was very instrumental in the development of the road train, particularly with cattle haulage, and we believe that he epitomises exactly what the industry was about, the hardships and the trials of trying to get a new venture operating in the bush.
Well, as it's certainly been a fascinating visit, and I'd like to thank you for taking time to join us.